time. And we're now looking at Aaron, Bible character study number 32. At the bottom of the page, it says page 54. And so we're looking at Aaron for tonight. And I'm going to read, much of the material that we're looking at tonight is going to be quite familiar to us because we've already covered Moses. And of course, Moses and Aaron were brothers and they were a team. So a lot of the texts of Scripture are identical. And I'm going to read just a couple of verses out of Exodus 7 tonight to get us started. The 7th chapter of Exodus, and I'm going to be reading the first 13 verses. Then the Lord said to Moses, "See, I make you as God to Pharaoh, and your brother Aaron shall be your prophet. You shall speak all that I command you. You and your brother Aaron shall speak to Pharaoh, that he let the sons of Israel go out of his land. But I will harden Pharaoh's heart, that I may multiply my signs and my wonders in the land of Egypt. When Pharaoh does not listen to you, then I will lay my hand on Egypt and bring out my hosts, my people, the sons of Israel, from the land of Egypt by great judgments. The Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord when I stretch out my hand on Egypt and bring out the sons of Israel from their midst." So Moses and Aaron did it as the Lord commanded them, thus they did. Moses was 80 years old and Aaron 83 when they spoke to Pharaoh. Now the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, "When Pharaoh speaks to you, saying, 'Work a miracle,' then you shall say to Aaron, 'Take your staff and throw it down before Pharaoh, that it may become a serpent.'" So Moses and Aaron came to Pharaoh, and thus they did just as the Lord had commanded. And Aaron threw his staff down before Pharaoh and his servants, and it became a serpent. Then Pharaoh also called for the wise men and the sorcerers, and they also, the magicians of Egypt, did the same with their secret arts. For each one threw down his staff, and they turned into serpents. But Aaron's staff swallowed up their staffs. Yet Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and he did not listen to them as the Lord had said. So on our question sheet for tonight, we're going to start at the top with question number 1. When God called Moses from a continually burning bush in the wilderness to free his people, Israel, from slavery in Egypt, one of the excuses Moses made was that he wasn't eloquent and he was slow of tongue. While this wasn't true, Acts 7:22 makes clear that he was highly educated and good with words. God supplied him a spokesman, his older brother Aaron. What role would Aaron have? Moses would put the words in Aaron's mouth. God would be with his mouth. Aaron would speak for Moses to the people and be Moses' mouth. So God is to Moses as Moses is to Aaron. So, God is giving the words, and then Moses gives the words to his brother, and then Aaron is kind of the spokesman. Although by the time you get through the interchanges, in the first several chapters of the book of Exodus, it looks like Aaron is mostly just standing next to Moses, and Moses is himself doing most of the talking. So Aaron is just kind of alongside. Question number 2, genealogies are often listed as one's credentials. Who are the parents of Aaron and Moses? So we've got Amram, grandson of Levi, and Jochebed. Number 3, Aaron was only 3 when his parents, fearing God instead of Pharaoh, hid his baby brother for several months, and Jochebed ended up being employed by Pharaoh's daughter to raise him. Do you think his parents' faith had an impact on him? Absolutely. So he watched his parents trust God and not fear man. Number 4, who did Aaron marry? Elisheba. And that is the woman's name. So the Bible has wonderful names. It's a resource for, you can buy these baby name books. The Bible beats it every time. These are great names. Jochebed. What little girl wouldn't be honored to have that as a name? And Elisheba. What a wonderful name. So, yes. Number 5, what were the names of their sons? Here's some other good names. Nadab, Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar. Another collection of great names. And then out of question number 6, Moses, age 80, and Aaron, age 83, approached the most powerful man in the world to tell him Yahweh's message, "Let my people go." What was Aaron's role here and throughout the time of the plagues? Leading or support? Support. So he's not actually the leader. Moses is the leader, but Aaron is a faithful support. Number 7, after the glorious exodus from Egypt and God's miraculous supply of a river from a flinty boulder, camel raiders attacked Israel in the wilderness. Moses appointed Joshua to be the general of the Israelite army, while he, Moses, stood on top of a hill with the staff of God upraised to bring victory over Amalek. What was the role of Aaron and Hur? They supported or held Moses' hands so that they were steady until the sun set. So they actually got a rock for him to sit on, and Moses sat down and he had his hands up, and Aaron and Hur got one on either side and held his hands up all day long, because as long as his hands were up, Israel was winning. And when his hands fell down, they began to lose. Out of Exodus 28, question number 8. Who did God choose to ordain as priests? Aaron and his sons. Number 9, summarize what sort of clothing they were to wear. Holy garments. So the whole kit and caboodle is called holy, consecrated. And what sort of materials are used? Linen, and in colors. So, there's white linen, but it's not all just white. You've got gold, blue, scarlet, purple. What kind of headgear? It's a turban. It's got a turban wrapped around. And then the high priest actually has a gold plaque that is held on with a chain, probably right there on his forehead. And it says, "Holiness to the Lord" on it. And then the high priest also has a breastpiece made of linen, and it's got 12 stones held on in gold filigree on the front of it, and a pouch, a pocket. I guess I'm getting ahead of myself, aren't I? I am. So I'll just pause right there. Gold, blue, purple, scarlet. He had an ephod, breastplate, and linen robes. Number 10. What did Aaron wear on his shoulders? 2 onyx stones engraved with the names of the sons of Israel in filigree settings of gold as stones of memorial or remembrance before Yahweh. So, interesting note here, to fit the 12 names of tribes engraved onto onyx stones. We don't know how big they were, but that's a fairly skillful kind of a thing. Onyx is a pretty hard stone. It's not, it's not the hardest, but to be able, this is nearly very close to micro engraving. And how would they do that? Well, a graving tool, but to have a hard enough point. You're getting up there. There's a scale called the Mohs scale, M-O-H-S, which measures hardness in gemstones. And the higher you get, you have to have something harder than that in order to scratch it, to engrave on it. And once you get to onyx, you almost need corundum, which is either sapphire or ruby. Well, this is like, this is 1500 BC, and they're doing this? Well, yeah, that's what it says. They had the technique, they had the skill to do that kind of work. Number 11, what special items went in the breastpiece of judgment over Aaron's heart? The Urim and the Thummim. Now, there's been debate for the last 3,500 years exactly what this was. It means literally lights and glories. That's what the Hebrew words mean. And they're used apparently in decision making. You could consult the Urim and the Thummim and ask God a question: should we attack or should we not? But we're not even sure what they were. Were they stones that glowed? Were they? It seems kind of sacrilegious to think of them as like dice. That doesn't seem right. But they were something, and they were in a pouch in the ephod that the high priest wore. And they were part of the apparatus, part of the equipment that the high priest had. Number 12, what sort of ornamentation was on the hem of his robe? Alternating golden bells and embroidered pomegranates. When he entered or left the holy place before Yahweh, the tinkling sound of the bells would prevent Aaron's death. So those pieces of ornamentation were not just pretty, he was required to wear them. There's something about having that on his garb that God said, you've got to have that. You must have that on you when you come in to serve the Lord in the tabernacle. On the back side, from question number 13, Moses has now been on top of Mount Sinai, receiving the law for 40 days. The people, impatient, approached Aaron and asked him to make them replacement gods. What did Aaron do? He fashioned gold, all the jewelry, into a calf. Number 14, upon seeing the calf, Israel declared it their God who had rescued them from Egypt. What proclamation did Aaron make? Tomorrow shall be a feast to Yahweh, or to the Lord. So this is kind of a sad scene. Aaron has been supportive of his brother. He's got a role to play. He's part of the leadership team. He's doing a good job. He held Moses' arm up in the battle against the Amalekites. He was right there with Moses every day in Pharaoh's palace, standing strong. But now it looks like the pressure of the people, they're saying, where is this Moses? We don't know where he went. And we're out here in the middle of nowhere, and we need a God to worship. And he seemingly bows to their pressure and says, okay, well, give me your earrings. And apparently there's quite a pile of earrings to make a golden calf out of. And then when the people say, this is awesome, we're going to worship a calf, he seemingly, it's a little hard to tell, but seemingly he's trying to rescue the situation by saying, tomorrow is a feast to Yahweh. He's trying to kind of pull them back in. But how do you do that when you're the one who made the idol? He's already compromised. And now maybe he's feeling like, this has gotten out of hand. I didn't want it to go like this, but we don't know entirely what his motivation was. You might remember, we don't cover it. Well, yeah, we do cover it. The next question, 15, what was Aaron's response when Moses confronted him? Well, he blamed the people. And then, it's not in these verses, but he says something like, I threw it into the fire, and out came this calf. It's a lie. I mean, how blatant an excuse can you have? Very strange what he's doing here. But he's seeking to blame somebody else. And that's disappointing. Aaron was a good man, a godly man, a great man, but he's not perfect. And again, the Bible tells the story as it really is. It doesn't sugarcoat things. And so we know that Aaron messed up, and he messed up in a pretty big way. Number 16, Leviticus 8 details a week-long ceremony in which Aaron and his 4 sons are officially consecrated as priests of Yahweh. In chapter 9, Aaron presents a series of animal sacrifices to Yahweh according to God's precise specifications. Fire came from God, consuming the final offering, signifying God's acceptance of Aaron. However, what terrible thing happened in the very next chapter? Nadab and Abihu, Aaron's older 2 sons, offered strange fire before Yahweh. And what happened? Fire came out from God's presence and consumed them. Wow. So we're not 100% sure what that strange fire is. It's the offering of fire and incense that God did not sanction. God didn't provide instructions for that. And so Nadab and Abihu were saying, well, we can worship God the way we want to. Well, guess what? God determines the terms of our approach to him. We don't have the right to say, God is happy with anything we want to do. And God likes it when so if we in our windows had little statues of people, little, those of you who come out of a different background, you know what I'm talking about, icons, idols, saints. Yeah. Would that be okay? Would that be all right to have saints? No, that's not right. Or how about if on our wall we had a picture of a very great Christian, Charles Haddon Spurgeon, one of the greatest preachers who ever lived. Would it be okay if we had a picture of him up there? No, that's not right. We don't get to define, we don't get to determine the method, the means, the way of our approach to God. He tells us, this is the way that you come to me. And we don't get to say, well, I kind of want to use my own fire. I have this really nice pocket lighter, and I'd like to light my own fire. No. God tells us this is how we come to him. And Nadab and Abihu rebelled against that, and they were killed. Number 17, this seems harsh now. What were Aaron, Eleazar, and Ithamar not allowed to do? Mourn. God said, no crying, no weeping, no pulling your hair, don't tear your clothes. As a son, you're not allowed to do that. Whoa. Does God have the right to tell us things like that? Yes, he does. He does. And God is not being harsh. Number 19, what key idea is in view in this incident? Obey and fear the Lord. God is holy. God is not made in our image. We're made in his image. God is not just, sometimes you hear people say things like this, and if you have walked with the Lord, it can kind of make your skin crawl. People sometimes say things like, well, the big man in the sky. That's not good. That's not what this is at all. God is God. Yahweh is the Creator. He is worthy of our worship. He is worthy of our honor. He is worthy of unquestioning obedience. Yeah. You'll hear that kind of language too. Something or somebody bigger than we are. Well, his name is Yahweh. So, number 20, besides offering sacrifices for themselves and Israel, what special tasks did God give to Aaron and his descendants? They were to make a distinction between the holy and the profane, or the common, and to teach Israel all the statutes of the law. So one of the key roles of the priests down through the history of Israel, one of the things that they were supposed to be doing is to teach people, this is common, this is ordinary, but this over here belongs to God. So, for example, in the Old Testament, what belonged to God? Well, the Sabbath. Remember the Sabbath to keep it holy. The priestly garments were a reminder. We're serving a holy God. And on and on. The people of God were supposed to be able to think and to discern things that are common, profane, ordinary, but then there are things that are holy, and we need to understand the distinction between them. And the priests were supposed to be teachers. Intriguingly, very few times in the Old Testament, there's just a handful of times where you find that the priests actually did do teaching. I think in one or two of the revivals, maybe Josiah and Jehoshaphat, a couple of times it mentions the priests were teaching priests. But that's a sign of blessing when the priests are doing their duty in their teaching. Number 21, in Numbers 14 and following, we find a pairing. Moses and Aaron are together, the object of the people's grumbling, and this happens several times. What does this seem to indicate about the brothers? Would you say they were considered to be the leaders? And what kind of a relationship did they have with each other? pretty tight, pretty tight. They're pretty close. They stuck together pretty well. Now, there is that one time when Aaron and Miriam did some grumbling. There's that one time. But setting that aside, and I guess you'd have to set aside the golden calf. Other than that, Moses and Aaron were a good team. They backed each other up. They stuck together. Aaron, defended his brother and stuck with him. So they largely worked as a very good team. Number 22, the people of Israel are now nearing the promised land after 40 years of wandering, but they again have no water. God commands Moses to speak to the flinty boulder this time, but instead he struck it twice. This revealed the lack of faith in God in both Moses and Aaron. What punishment did they incur? They would not bring the assembly of Israel into the promised land. So after 40 years of wandering on the backside of the desert, at the very last, they're not going to go in. And of course, that's tragic, but that is what God said. Number 23, shortly thereafter, God says it's time for Aaron to be gathered to his people, that is to die. To which of his sons did the priesthood pass? Eleazar. And so Eleazar becomes the high priest, and then other relatives take on the role of the other priests for Israel. So what are some key lessons that we have picked up from the life of Aaron? Be faithful, don't bow to pressure, don't let the crowds dictate your behavior, stay strong. What else? Stand up for what you believe in. Yeah. Don't have someone to change your mind. Yep. Anybody else? Simple old trust and obey. Yep. Amen. Any other comments, questions? Take your prayer bulletins, please.